Yo, what's going on, everybody? This is Don Martelli, host of the PR Bunker podcast, here today to talk to Barry Horwitz about the challenges nonprofits face in doing what they do best, which is delivering on the mission, and then Barry's work in terms of consulting them through some of those challenges and creating them into opportunities. So tune in. It's a good one. Hello, everybody, and thanks for joining me on the latest edition of the PR Bunker podcast. I am your host, Don Martelli. I am here with a professional and personal friend of mine, Barry Horwitz. How are you, Barry?
I'm doing really well, Don. How are you?
I'm wonderful, sir. Really pumped about this conversation today because you and I have crossed paths professionally for years now, and really do watch your work from afar and in terms of the work you do for nonprofits. And today we'll be discussing just what's going on in the nonprofit world and how you're helping them through those challenges. And we'll get into some marketing communications issues as we get to the conversation here. But first and foremost, love to have you just give a brief introduction of your background and what you're currently focused on for the audience here.
Sure. Thanks, Don. I've been an independent strategy consultant for about 20 years now. But I do have a varied and diverse background that I bring to that. I started strategy consulting with the Boston Consulting Group. So that was a global firm working with very large companies. I've also been on the other side of the equation. I've been an entrepreneur. Back a while ago, I co-founded a venture-backed internet company with a colleague, and we ran that for 3 years. I was the chief operating officer. I've also been what you might call an intrapreneur. I mean, my first job out of college was I launched an in-store bakery division at a local supermarket chain, built it out to 32 units before going off to business school. Wow. Also launched a mail order pharmacy inside a retailer in the Midwest that had pharmacy retail.
Jeez, so talk about a potpourri of backgrounds.
It's a rambling path.
Well, what's the common connection between all those jobs and those positions?
I think the biggest connection has been growth initiatives, really. Landing in the right place and trying to figure out some things. I did not know a lot about bakery. I also don't really cook, and yet figure out what it needs, what's needed in order to build that. The mail order pharmacy was at a time when health maintenance was changing and retail pharmacy was facing new threats. And we just saw a gap in the market. We weren't the first, but we were very quick to follow. Ultimately, that one got sold to Medco, which is now Express Scripts. So we did fill a space in the Midwest that they weren't.
Got it. That's great. So obviously, you talked about change and helping, find solutions to problems. I've always said that nonprofits, the world has kind of flipped on its head, where the nonprofits that are doing, great work have the least resources to do their job. Talk about your work with nonprofits. What does that look like? What does the job entail, and what are some of the challenges you're seeing out there?
Well, I think you're right with this. People have the impression sometimes that nonprofits are these sort of bake sale little operations. In a lot of cases, they're really pretty sophisticated. They're facing really tough challenges, and they look a lot like startups sometimes because they're always starved for financial resources, and they're always trying to figure out how to do more with less. They're also challenging because it's not like a for-profit where you just try to figure out the best way to grow the bottom line. There's a mission there, and you have to think about how can you be effective while still actually getting your costs lower than your revenues. So I try to do something that is, not the classic 5-year, somebody recently called that credenza-ware. That's the idea of this, really nice 5-year brochure or binder that sits on the back of a credenza
and collects dust.
Absolutely. Right. Now, so part of it is understanding what the organization can do and is trying to do, and then also looking at the context. What's happening outside? What's happening to either customers or the people they serve? What new regulations may be coming? One of the things I've been working on a lot, one of the areas we've talked about is in the health and human services area, where they're facing a lot of changes. Healthcare, how it's paid for. There are going to be new regulations, Medicare, Medicaid, and Medicaid is going to be probably different every state. We know change is coming. We don't know in what form or when. So one of the things we've tried to do with one of them, and this is something that you and I talked about, is if we can solidify the operations and focus of one of these organizations, maybe they can be more like the expert, subject matter expert, and speak to the regulators and provide some guidance, and then perhaps everybody will be better off. So sometimes strategy is really thinking about who you have to reach.
Sure. I mean, you're right, because ultimately it's about the core of, I think, what you do, what we do at the Belfort Group, and just in my professional career, it's we connect people, right? We connect people with ideas, solutions, sometimes more challenges and through the work, because it is kind of messy, right? It reminds me of baking. I couldn't bake a thing, but before once COVID hit and we needed flour for a recipe, I ended up buying a 50-pound bag of flour, and I said to myself, what am I going to do with 50 pounds of flour? And I said, well, I can make bagels. And eventually I figured it out, right? And I think in your business and my business, a lot of it does entail figuring things out. What are the maybe walk me through a brief case study, or just kind of put into context the work that you've done in terms of identifying a problem, coming to the table with some solutions, and just kind of, maybe pound your chest a little bit in terms of the success you've had with some of your clients.
Sure. Well, one I can think of quite a while back actually was a small venue, an art venue, and they had great hopes for expansion and growth, and then we took a look at their financials and realized that, in fact, no, they were in serious debt and might actually be at risk of shutting down. So we tried to take a look at, well, what's the real benefit they do? The other thing that had come about with them is that, donors give them a certain amount of money if they'll do this special thing, which is maybe a little off mission, and sometimes then they do one more special thing, and pretty soon they, the assumption is you get, I don't know, $20,000, and you're going to spend $10,000 doing what the investor wants and use the extra. And in fact, instead, what it means is you spend $25,000 doing what they wanted you to do, and it's not on mission, and it's more of a distraction.
Sure.
In that case, we actually got them to really tighten the focus, do one or two programs that really were on mission and focus the effort there, stop doing other things that were distractions. And it really ultimately turned into a way to get the revenue back on track. And then once you're back on track, then you can start thinking about how to grow that more deeply.
Sure. That's funny.
So that's often what it looks like.
I think the misconception about nonprofits is that they're there just to service the community they're built for, which is true, but they do have to, quote unquote, make money, right? They have to drive funds to fund the mission and deliver on that mission. I mean, and fundraising is not easy. I mean, it was difficult. No. It's always been difficult, and asking people for money is a hard thing. And I think things that we do here at the firm are designed to help nonprofits with that engine, but it's still a hard thing. I mean, in your experience, how has, I guess, fundraising changed or been the same over the years when it comes to working with nonprofits, and how do you guide them through those difficulties?
Well, one that we were just looking at is an opportunity that came from this crisis of the pandemic. I mean, one of the things that had started to happen, particularly in health and human services, is that everybody starts throwing these galas, and galas are, everybody says they love galas, but in fact, if you get invited to 5 or 6 in a season, and you listen to some music you don't necessarily want, and it's a big event, and a lot of times it costs a lot of money to throw it, and it uses a lot of the staff time as well. So there was an opportunity here to use things like Zoom early on anyway, before we were all so sick of Zoom, the idea of getting more intimate little settings and really connecting people with the mission. I think that's the hardest part. When I've dealt with some nonprofits that deal with, there are some causes that everybody backs, right? Everybody knows somebody who's faced breast cancer or things like that, and they have these giant walks. If you're dealing with, say, brain tumors, or you're dealing with people who have intellectual disabilities, these are require a lot of money, don't have a lot to show for it usually, but are really deep-seated needs. And trying to broaden the community beyond those who have just been directly impacted is a very tough go.
So true. So true. I mean, I find that your point about galas and golf tournaments and the things that we, quote unquote, always do. Even before the pandemic, kind of they're still relevant, but I think that we've been talking to nonprofits about just changing their fundraising model, where it's not about two major moments in time throughout the course of a year, but it's about a million little moments in time throughout the course of the entire year. To your point, to make that connection, because you have to make the mission and its impact on the community so important and relevant to the folks you're trying to target, whether it be corporate donors, individual donors, major gift donors, as important as possible, so they feel the connection to the mission. And it's growing harder and harder because, one, there's so much information out there available to us within a single 140 characters on Twitter or a text message, right? But also the fact that there's more and more nonprofits, because the mass media has really shed a light on a variety of just complex, deep, and integrated issues that need support, which is why these nonprofits are being created and popping up. And it just allows, for us, the end user, I guess, so the target for donors, where do you spend your money, right? It's just one of those things where I'd love to give $100 to a million different organizations, or do I just give $1 million to one organization? So it's a great position for you and I to be in, because as consultants, we can help them through on your end, the strategy, the framing, and where we come into play is sort of the feet on the ground, the execution, and really getting the activation. So I love the challenge, because it's mission driven and it's really impactful. So this has been great. Any last bit?
That's great about working with nonprofits is the people are passionate. They're passionate about what they do.
Good point.
They're mission driven. They're willing to dig in sometimes and really use the rigor that you need to do that. But it's also the passion and the motivation that really makes them fun to work with.
Yeah, and it rubs off on people, right? We have one client that's in the veteran services space, and I obviously have family members that have served and things of that nature, but I've never felt so connected to their particular mission and making sure that veterans, when they come back from service, or even as they get older, having all the services they need around them in one stop versus having to go to different agencies for different things. So you feel that connection, and having those people internally that just carry that flag and are so passionate about it is super important. But this has been great. So before we wrap up, Barry, if people are interested in your services and in nonprofits out there looking to connect with you, where can they find you?
Well, so I have a website. I don't do a lot of marketing, but I do have a website. It's horwitzandco.com. And I only have one O in my last name. So it's horwitzandco.com. I do a monthly newsletter just to kind of throw some ideas out there, and you can subscribe to that on that site. So again, that's the two ways. Generally, the rest of my connections have come from word of mouth and networking in that, but the website's my main vehicle.
That's great. And I do highly recommend subscribing to the newsletter. I hope Barry and I got reconnected a few weeks ago. I got his newsletter, some really good stuff in there. So highly recommend it from yours truly. So please check it out. Well, Barry, this has been great. I really appreciate the time, and we'll do this again, and we'll go through some other case studies, but I really do appreciate it.
I appreciate it too, Don. Thanks very much.
You're welcome. Thanks for tuning in to the PR Bunker podcast. Really enjoyed my conversation with Barry Horwitz and talking about the work he does with nonprofits and helping them through challenges and turning them into opportunities to raise money and drive volunteerism and really deliver on that mission. So really important work that Barry does, and looking forward to hearing more from him down the line and the impact that his clients are making in the community. In the meantime, if you want to find other episodes of the PR Bunker podcast, please visit prbunker.com, or you can find this podcast on any of the services that you prefer, Spotify, Apple, and the like. In the meantime, hit me up on the socials at Big Guy D. And until next time, I'll see you later.